good, that gang? We've got a lot to cover today. Gabe got involved in a controversy I didn't expect him to jump into. Steam on Linux leads to an odd partnership. One developer fumbled a major launch and Valve had to save the day. Specs got announced for a big PC port, and I don't know what the heck is going on with Epic and Tim Sweeney right now. And since there's so much to discuss today, let's start with that controversy I didn't expect Gabe to jump into. That controversy is Microsoft's attempted acquisition of Activision. Wait. Listen as I craft a rhythm with that precision. Fanboys on a crash collision of mass division. Is it a rash decision or mass division to block Microsoft's acquisition of Activision? I don't know where that came from. We're just gonna forget that happened. Okay, bars aside, either you live under a gaming rock or you know by now that Microsoft has been pursuing an acquisition of the makers of Call of Duty for about a year now. Most recently, Phil Spencer announced that Microsoft has entered a 10-year commitment to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo following the merger of Microsoft and Activision Blizzard King for 10 years. In Kotaku's reporting of this, they contacted Valve on the matter and Gabe himself had this to say, quote, "We're happy that Microsoft wants to continue using Steam to reach customers with Call of Duty when their Activision acquisition closes. Microsoft has been on Steam for a long time and we take it as a signal that they are happy with gamers' reception to that and the work we are doing. Our job is to keep building valuable features for not only Microsoft but all Steam customers and partners. Microsoft offered and even sent us a draft agreement for long-term Call of Duty commitment, but it wasn't necessary for us because A, we're not believers in requiring any partner to have an agreement that locks them to shipping games on Steam into the distant future. B, Phil and the games team at Microsoft have always followed through on what they told us they would do, so we trust their intentions. And C, we think Microsoft has all the motivation they need to be on the platforms and devices where Call of Duty customers want to be." End quote. That is the most Gabe answer ever, and I believe every word of it. But I think the difference between Sony and Valve is bigger than the difference between selling games on consoles and selling games on PCs. The difference is that Sony and Microsoft are both betting big on cloud gaming, and Gabe is not. Without the pressure from investors for substantial growth in every quarter, Valve can sit comfortably in the knowledge that they are on the right path. Valve doesn't see Game Pass as an existential threat to their business model, which stands in stark contrast to their feelings of Windows as an operating system at the time of Windows 8. Windows 8 is the match that set the fire that eventually brought us to Steam Deck. Meanwhile, Valve has no concerns about Microsoft buying Activision. I would go as far as to predict that Valve will get more out of this deal than the promise that Call of Duty will stay on Steam. Modern Warfare 2 is one of the biggest games of the year, and it doesn't work on the Steam Deck. Not only that, but Valve has been outspoken about getting Game Pass to Steam. And when I say Game Pass coming to Steam, I mean the way that EA Play works. It would allow you to subscribe through Steam and then give you the option of playing those games natively. Anyway, I think that the merger just plain works in Valve's favor, and with Gabe's vocal support of this transaction, there's an even higher chance that we'll see things like Game Pass on Steam or Activision games working on Steam Deck. As far as I can tell, these are things that Microsoft and Valve both want, but they have to iron out the details of what it means. I have no doubt that the acquisition will go through, so I'm sure we'll see how this pans out in 2 to 3 years. Next up, let's talk about how CD Projekt Red has sadly fumbled the PC launch of Witcher 3's big new-gen update. This is a huge free update that included scalable subtitles, FSR 2.1, photo mode, some awesome mods baked in, lots of quality of life features like quickcast, not to mention ray tracing and 4K textures if you're playing this on a big rig. Unfortunately, none of that matters because it turns out many PC players are reporting crashes. Like, you can barely start the game and it'll crash. This is especially true for the Steam Deck. For my part, I downloaded the game, started a brand new save, and it played the cutscenes just fine, but crashed as soon as the gameplay intro was set to begin. This is really disappointing, and I don't want to dunk on CD Projekt Red since I know no one is more disappointed than they are, but when Cyberpunk launched the way it did, there was a lot of testimony that supported the notion that the QA team reported a bunch of bugs and therefore that management was aware of the general quality or lack thereof, but management decided to launch the game anyway. I want to believe that CDPR has learned a lot from that experience, but the nature of these bugs makes it seem like they had to know there were major issues and they decided to launch anyway. That is bad. I hope that's not what happened because I know PC players would have been fine if CDPR came out and said, hey, we were going to launch this, but this is not up to our standard of quality and we're going to take a couple of weeks to get it right for you. No one would have been mad at that. They did tweet the next morning to let us know that they're aware of the issues and are working to resolve them as soon as possible, so we'll see how that develops. Now, this was addressed by Valve pretty quickly because Pierre-Luc did tweet that they deployed a hotfix to Proton that basically fixes the game. So here we have Valve developers stepping in and saving the day. Shout out to Valve and the Steam Deck. This is reminiscent of two things from a recent interview that The Verge conducted with Valve. The first is that Valve said that Steam Deck will probably never be stable compared to a console. A few of you commented on this subject in my video about the interview, Hidden Blade said this: "Lol, the Steam Deck will never be stable. Welcome to PC gaming. Nothing is ever 100% stable." End quote. Yeah, pretty much, because even with Valve doing everything they can, PC developers have a very high degree of freedom to really mess things up the way that CDPR did here. The second relevant thing from that interview is that Valve is always working on individual games playing better on Linux, and therefore the Steam Deck as a platform. Apparently they worked on Halo Infinite for 6 months. Listen to this, quote, "We basically had to invent new Vulkan features for that game to get supported," end quote. So yeah, they're pretty accustomed to saving the day by now. Alright, there's been a smattering of deck-related news in the last week. Let's start with how Steam on Linux has found an unexpected partner. Valve employee Pierre Liu posted this picture on Twitter of Steam on Linux working inside of a Tesla. In his caption, he says, quote, "Cool to see all the hard work on Steam for Linux, RadV, Proton, etc. getting leveraged in all sorts of ways this year," end quote. And honestly, I personally don't have any passion for Tesla, but this caption gets me really excited. PC gaming being sort of unlocked to this level is so fun to see. In other news, we got to take a look at the minimum and recommended specs for Returnal, and yeah, this was going to be a tough one for the Steam Deck. The Returnal port to PC was announced at the Game Awards, as was the port of The Last of Us 1. Neil Druckmann himself confirmed that The Last of Us 1 will run on the Steam Deck, but Returnal is leaving a bit more of a question mark. If you go to the store page, you can scroll down to find the specs, and the minimum graphics card is a GTX 1060, which seems a bit out of the Steam Deck's reach. The recommended specs include a 2070 and a whole 32GB of RAM, so that's completely out of the question, clearly. Of course, this makes sense for Returnal. Returnal is the first real port to PC of a PS5 only game. Okay, I guess The Last of Us 1 counts as a PS5 only game, but it's a remaster of a PS3 game, so not exactly the same, I think. Anyway, Returnal is quite demanding and really does play best at 60 FPS, so I suspect these specs are aimed at playing at 60 or higher. Given that, I'm leaning towards Returnal not really having reasonable performance on Steam Deck. As always, I would love to be proven wrong, but that's kind of all we have to go on right now. Also, for game announcements that came out of the Game Awards, we already knew that Final Fantasy XVI was a timed exclusive on PlayStation, but I still had questions about Crash Rumble and Death Stranding 2. The trailers for these games at the Game Awards certainly implied that they weren't coming to PC on day one, and yeah, in the week since then, it seems like that's still true. Death Stranding 2 will start as a PS5 only game, and Crash Rumble is only launching on Xbox and PlayStation, so once again, Activision is leaving PC gamers out of the fun. It looks like I can't sell my PS5 just yet, even though I would love to. Steam Deck HQ scored a bit of an exclusive bit of news with regard to the upcoming Sea of Stars. Sea of Stars is a gorgeous looking pixel art RPG from Sabotage Studios, makers of The Messenger. While you would expect this game to play well on Steam Deck, it's always good to get confirmation from devs that they will support the Steam Deck, and that's exactly what Sabotage Studio have confirmed to SDHQ. The article over there says this, quote, "Although it's too early to confirm details relating to gamepad and accessibility options, they have implemented and tested optimizations for the Steam Deck and plan to make it compatible on day one," end quote. That's great news, and I can't wait to play this one. Okay, here is yet another way Valve saves the day. Nvidia is ending support for its Game Stream feature on Shield devices, and you want to know what they suggest using instead? Steam Link. This is ridiculous. There's no good reason for Nvidia to end support of Game Stream, and I consider it pretty disappointing that they're going down this route. Still, as you likely know by now, you should be able to use Sunshine as an alternative. Hey, do you know about Steam Pals? Steam Pals is a channel that I have with other deck tubers, and we just put out a video of our games of the year. This one's got the Fox, High Tech Low Life, Bill from Nerd Nest, Michael from the channel XLM, and myself. I'll leave a link in the description so you can check that out. Epic has been having a really weird week. Most recently, they delisted every Unreal game from Steam and Epic and other digital stores. This is basically an effect of Epic no longer supporting older online games. They talked about this in their own press release, saying that, quote, "We will begin turning off out-of-date online services and servers for many older games in the Epic family as we move to solely support Epic Online Services with its unified friend system, voice chat features, parental controls, and parental verification features. Most titles will be playable offline, while some will no longer be playable," end quote. The worst part though is that despite many games still being playable offline, they have nonetheless chosen to remove these games from all digital storefronts. As of writing, you can still buy from some authorized Steam key resellers or unauthorized key shops, but those keys will run out and prices are going to surge dramatically. Some of these are games that even have single player campaigns. Many of them can still be played on LAN, or they even have user servers. It's more than reasonable to consider these end of life as far as Epic support goes, but there's no reason to make the game completely unpurchasable. That is completely unreasonable. At this point, it would be great if they released all the source code, but short of that, maybe they can do us all a favor and sell the Unreal IP to Microsoft. I'm sure Microsoft would love to own yet another classic shooter IP. All of this is on the heels of Epic getting bad press twice earlier in the week. For one, they're being sued because parents find Fortnite to be too addictive, and secondly, there was more than a little confusion when the developer of Goat Simulator 3 recommended that people run the game through Steam for better controller support. Apparently that recommendation was specifically for the DualSense only, but it's still pretty funny to hear that the solution is to run this Epic exclusive game through Steam for better support. Shout out to Steam input on that one, just another case of Valve saving the day, I guess. As I was getting ready to publish this video, some more big news about Epic just dropped, and I may have to make a separate video dedicated to the subject, but here it is. Epic has been fined $500 million by the FTC. The high points in this fine, as pointed out by Steven Totilo at Axios, are as follows. First of all, this is the highest penalty ever obtained for an FTC ruling. FTC alleges that Epic has used dark patterns to dupe many customers into making unintentional purchases. They also allege that Epic knew children were playing Fortnite and collected data from them without parental consent, and that its default settings were harming young users. The FTC says Epic ignored more than 1 million user complaints and repeated employee concerns that huge number of users were being wrongfully charged. So the $520 million fine is comprised of two pieces: $275 million for violating the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and $245 million to refund customers for its dark patterns and billing practices. There's a lot of discourse right now going on about properly parenting your child, so I'll say this: yes, of course, the parent is the main person or persons responsible for the well-being of their child. As such, parents have every right to lobby for child protection laws like Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule, and parents subsequently have every right to expect these laws to be enforced. There are reasons that they exist, just like there are reasons that child labor laws exist. Anyway, that's all for this video, and there was a ton more news that happened this weekend, so I'm probably gonna have to put out another deck roundup in a couple of days. By the way, I know I promised a handheld giveaway, but I did have to postpone that slightly. It will be coming in my next video, so check that out. But yeah, like if you liked the video and dislike if you weren't feeling it, but definitely leave a comment and let me know why. Deck gang out. Goodbye!